I'd like to share some thoughts with you about the perception of the manufacturing about resource scarcity. By the way, I'm from PwC, but I'm not an accountant. Maybe this is a relief for you guys. We did a global survey, and I'd like to share some thoughts and findings with you. How do we do this? I've got 3 points I'd like to discuss with you. It's about the bottom line of resource scarcity. It's about the main findings that we find in our survey, and we organized a side event in the WEF, the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, and I would like to share some thoughts, the findings that we got there. And in the end, finally, I'd like to share the approach that we from PwC have for our clients. If we look just 2 years back, you can see on this slide that it's a very complex thing that we entered in 2 years ago. You know, 2 years ago I didn't know what a rare metal was. Maybe they were not. They weren't, and in the end they were not so rare. But you know, nobody knows what a rare earth was in that time. Maybe you expert did know, but I didn't know. There were a lot of screaming texts in the papers. And it's all about shortage. So that something would happen, we thought. And if we look at just 2 years later, a lot of action is coming into practice. You know, you can see it on this slide. It's just a few examples. But also, there's in the end, there's a rare earth race rattled by retreating prices. So there's also, you know, it's a dynamic market. So there's also maybe dark clouds ahead. By all these actions that we take, like substitution, like new mining and all this kind of stuff. So it's a dynamic field. I think the main bottom line is this graph. You know, all these graphs are increasing, but if you look at the four red balls, then you see one is the population, and if the figures are correct, then in the end we end up with 9 million people. Which should live, I would hope, a comfortable way. So we need some GDP. And maybe the most important thing is the lifestyle change that could happen. You know, if we have a very big middle class in China and in other emerging countries, in the BRIC countries, and everybody needs an iPad, and I suggest everybody takes an iPad. Then this times, you know, this population times lifestyle change and GDP leads to this growth, enormous growth in consumption. Although we are now maybe in a small dip, we warn our customers, these manufacturers, that if this dip is over, then there will be a huge demand. So you better be prepared. About this global survey, we conducted a survey in the FTSE 500 companies, and we invited 120 companies to fill out the questionnaire. And in the end, 70. This is mentioned 69, but one was came in later. Around 70 questions were filled out by senior executives of these companies. We focused with our questionnaire about awareness, preparedness, impact, risk and opportunities, and responses from these companies on the issue. We also have it's a global survey, so we have companies from Asia, Pacific, from Americas, from Europe, and we selected the biggest companies that we could find, and so 84% of these companies have a revenue of more than 10 billion euro, or let's say dollar. With this, we focused also on the minerals and metal scarcity. If you look at natural resources, of course you have 4 natural resources, but we focused on the minerals and the metals. The key findings of our survey were as follows. This is depicted in 4 main findings. So this is the perception of the industry. It's not our perception, it's the perception of the industry. First one is that the impact is growing, and it's substantially over the next 5 years. So there is impact right now, and it's a perception that it will grow substantially in the next 5 years. The second one is that the geopolitical and economic scarcity are most important. Of course, we believe the economic dimension of scarcity, volatility of pricing and pricing is of course important that we could tell beforehand. But the geopolitical scarcity is of main concern for the companies that we interviewed. I'll come to that later in more detail. The third one is there's a large variations in preparedness between sectors and regions. So, you know, we selected seven sectors. I come to that later. And there's a large variation between preparedness on this issue. And also there's a variation on the different regions that the companies are settled. And the fourth main conclusion was that the supply chain and the new business models would be crucial for response. So it's not only to arrange your supply, it's also to look for a whole supply chain, and so not only tier one, let's say, but also there's a new thinking going on, like on new business models that I will come to later. So we asked the companies, is resource scarcity a pressing issue? And on the left side you see the sectors that we involved. These are all sectors that have to deal with metals and minerals. And so what you can see here is that for infrastructure, high tech and automotive, there's a lot of concern about this issue. But also you can see there is a lot of, you know, in mainstream there's a lot of attention about this subject. Where for me it's interesting and remarkable maybe that aerospace is not that impacted by, let's say they don't perceive this as a very pressing issue yet. And the next question that we asked is, did you experience unstable supply yet? And you can see on this graph per sector what is the perception of the industry. And what is remarkable, we think, is that infrastructure has you know, in 5 years the influence of the within the infrastructure will grow enormously and doubled, whereas the renewable energy is kind of preparing right now in a way maybe, and will have a perception that this influence will reduce. This is the only sector that envisages that it will reduce. Also, it's remarkable, I think, that aerospace is very low on the percentages. Of course, if you interview big companies, there could be a risk in this resource scarcity, but also can be an opportunity in this resource scarcity. If you're a big company, you have a lot of power maybe to get a solution out of this risk, and maybe this is in the end an opportunity for your company to grow bigger. If you look at this slide, then we depicted from the different regions. And to the left there's the risk, and to the right there's the opportunity. What I find surprising is there are fairly high figures on this. So there's a big risk in a way, and there's a big opportunity. And also there is a difference between in Europe there's a big risk and a big opportunity, but in Asia Pacific the figures are lower, and in America they're also somewhat lower. If you look at the preparedness of the companies, so we asked them, are you prepared? You see this following thing is that in general, let's say 50% of the companies are feeling well prepared, and this is the bigger companies with 10 billion euro. I think if you interview companies like, that's my experience with maybe 1 billion euro or maybe 2 billion euro, you get a different picture. If you look at the different sectors, then renewable energy seems to be very well prepared. The automotive seems to be very well prepared, whereas the high-tech and the chemical sector has some catching up to do on this slide. If you can, so you can see on this slide. I have to stress that this is 70 companies worldwide. It's not a statistical analysis. It's no and it's the perception of the industry. So if you look at the measures, if we go from preparedness to the measures, what kind of measures does the industry take to mitigate this perceived risk? And I think the EU Commissioner will be very happy that the first, the biggest, the largest measure is this resource efficiency, because he has this roadmap on resource efficiency. I would say, well, this is quite kind of normal attitude towards every company in every time should make his production efficient as possible, of course. Maybe the second and the third are more interesting. There is a lot of expectation from strategic alliance with suppliers, and this is also why I'm very interested to have the possibility to present here, because my clients are looking for a resilient supply chain. And in the end, they will come to the miner in the end of their supply chain, and they like from the start of their supply chain a resilient supply chain, and this is also acknowledged by this and illustrated by these answers by the companies. The other thing is the third is the supplier diversification, and this is also upstream measure, and then there you can see for yourself there's a lot of possibilities to mitigate measures. And what is surprising to me is that there's a lot of measures have a very high percentage, but it also could mean that it's conceived of a very complex issue, where nobody knows exactly what to do. So this could also be an interpretation of this slide. Then last January, I think we hosted the event with the WEF, and we had some nice discussions on the lunch with 25 C-level of 25 companies, and there were also NGOs and scientists involved. And this led to 4 statements that it's not only about scarcity; it's also about access. So it's more about access than about scarcity. The second thing that what strikes us was that the interlinkages between the resources are vital. So if you have let's say a shortage of your mineral, some mineral, you have to dig deeper maybe, and maybe you have to take more energy and extract more water. So this is a tension point for these guys over there. And also there's an interesting finding, I think, that there's a little consensus about these resource scenarios in the future. So everybody is looking for what is it a real problem? Is it an issue? How do we deal with it? It's not very clear. Also for the different countries, like Germany is very active on it, whereas the Netherlands, where I come from, is very laid back on it. Say, well, there is a free market, so deal with the market. But Germany say, well, the free market is not working, so we have to deal with it in our own way. And the fourth was that collaborative action is required to grow sustainable resource models in the new world. So this is 2 ways. One is that there is a new world order. The countries who have the resources could gain from it substantially, we think. And in the end, we need collaborative action to grow sustainable in this way. Take some water. Then our approach for this issue, we like to make a division between physical scarcity, economic scarcity, and geopolitical scarcity. The physical scarcity, I think it should be clear. The economic scarcity should be clear, and the geopolitical scarcity dimension is more like China closing borders, that kind of stuff, or export quota. And if you look at this survey, then these companies are most concerning about this geopolitical geopolitical dimension, because it's very hard for them to get some influence on this. And this is done then for the bigger companies. Like if you have a smaller company, it's even more important, I think. We got a lot of questions from our clients about how do we deal with it, and we suggested to take 4 angles of action. You can look at the upstream side, the resources. You can look at your production and the process. You could look at your product itself. Maybe you should not deliver this product, maybe you should turn it to a service, like Philips in my country is doing. They are not selling bulbs anymore, light bulbs, but they're selling light. It's a totally different attitude to the business and a totally different business model, which you get more grip on the product, and you can even more easier recycle it or close the loop. And that's the fourth angle of action. You can look at the end of life situation, the downstream. So what we do is we look at these four angles and distinguish per angle of action different measures. So if you look at the resource, you can have it about vertical integration, stockpiling, more suppliers, but also financial instruments like hedging. So all these angles were we try to make this complete for this company and to evaluate these angles of action, so that they can make the best choice how to react on this potential scarcity, if there is any. It's also it's a complex issue, and it's a new issue for the company, so it's not clear in a company who should deal with it. You know, you have one side, you have the supply chain, you have treasury maybe for hedging, but you have also the environmental manager, you have the waste manager, you have the R&D, you have the strategy guys, you have the CSR manager, the sales. So we find out in our research that, and the question that we got from our customers, that there is no ownership of the issue. It's a new issue, but who owns it? I think this is the first question to be answered in a company, and we assume that there would be a C-level responsible for this. If we look at our approach, then we have a four-step approach. So first we go for a resource scan. Just investigate what elements do you use and what is the criticality of it. Secondly, you select some of the items and you go for a deep analysis. And then you have a third step, you formulate this resource strategy, which we were surprising that a lot of companies don't have this strategy. So they don't know where it owns and they don't have a strategy on it. They're just, as we call it in Holland, some kind of a PEEP system. So there is an ad hoc action if there's something, if the supply chain runs dry, and then they mitigate tier 1, and the day after tier 2 is run dry, and you know there's no cohesive action on this. And of course, the first step is then the resource implementation. Oh, sorry, it's the wrong way. If you go to this first step, we selected, we formulated 6 sub-steps in this, and I will illustrate this by an example. It's nothing more than filling out this matrix. So, which are the critical resources? What is the global issue of it? You know, historically, currently, and in the future. From this, there comes an action driver. And within this action driver, you can formulate from different angles of action different measures, like stated here. So you can go for efficiency, you can go for stockpiling, you can go for vertical integration, the whole bunch. So we make this matrix complete, fill it out, and then prioritize, evaluate all the options, and then prioritize in a rank from 1 till 5. And then discuss with our client which is the best option to go forward with it. And also the combinations of mitigation measures is maybe has the best impact. So if you go for vertical integration and you combine it with a service, then maybe this has the best impact on the resilience of your supply chain. So the question is, manufacturers explore new angles of action, and the question for me, for you, would be, what is your angle of action? Maybe an interesting new thing is that on the right corner, it's mentioned the Rohstoff Alliance. This is a German initiative. To combine procurement power, to integrate procurement power, to upscale their procurement power. although there are quite heavy industries there like Siemens and other, they still have the feeling that they have to combine their procurement power to have the best deal. And this is called the Rohstoff Alliance, as they call it. And also there are lots of actions going on, as you can see on this slide. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. And if you like to have a look at all the tables, graphs that are in the report, you can download it from our site. But also, if you give me your business card, I can provide a hard copy and send it over to you, and then you can put it on the table somewhere. Thank you very much.
Rob, many thanks. That's a very interesting and thought-provoking presentation. Do we have any questions for Rob? I'd like to sort of follow up with something. I mean, you mentioned that one of the ways to mitigate risk is vertical integration, and in fact, just over the last few days, we've seen something go along that way, where actually the other way around, where Molycorp, a rare earths producer, took over NeoMaterials, a manufacturer of magnetic materials. Do you see the situation in the future where companies like Philips or battery manufacturers, for in the case of Cobalt, and would actually invest or buy into cobalt production to ensure that they have their supply insured in the future?
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of scarcity these days, except for typical rare earth. And if we go for the real clean energy transition, then on terbium, europium, and yttrium there will be a lot of demand. So the companies who deal with this raw materials, these elements, they are looking for ways to secure their supply. So definitely they are looking upstream to secure their supply. And the questions that we have right now is maybe 100% related, 90% related to rare earth scarcity. The other things like we have this morning, we had a lot of presentations. There is no scarcity in a lot of elements. The rare earth is. It's not a question of that they're scarce, but it's a question that there's very little supply. And if you look at this market, then you have three entities who deal with the rare earth. It's Lynas from Australia, it's Molycorp from the US, and it's the state-owned Chinese companies. So you better prepare if you like a resilient supply chain and you need a rare earth.
I think what you can see though is just a few years ago cobalt was trading at $40 a pound, and now it's obviously come down in price. So technology changes, or in the case of byproduct production, the production of the primary product might change the availability of the secondary product. So that's the situation. Rare earths are in scarcity at the moment, but there's certainly potential for other metals, I would have thought, in the future to enter periods of scarcity.
It's also one of our options, in our matrix, that you don't look not only look at your suppliers, but also look at your products. If you can maybe recycle the critical elements in it, then you create your own supply. And
is there an appetite amongst manufacturers to really dig into that recycling process?
Yeah, there's a lot of surely is. Although it's it's difficult, it's a new business, but it's designed for recycling is a buzzword.
Because previously it was they sort of stuck to their own knitting, as it were. They concentrated on their core competence and would try to outsource the other areas. So now you're saying that they really need to pay attention to those things.
Yeah, if you look for instance, Rhodia as a plant for recycling of their terbium, europium, and yttrium in the lighting. So they sell the rare earth to maybe a company like Philips, and they try to get it back for recycling.